back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Welcome back to the program. Today we're talking about the latest innovations in hearing, as well as discussing testing for hearing on infants and children, which is a whole other ballgame from working with people, well, like us boomers. Dr. Ted Venema is with us from NextGen and Mainland Hearing Centers across British Columbia. And Dr. Ted, we were talking about some of the creative ways you audiologists work with very small children, and the tests, the behavioral tests, and then you told us a few minutes ago about the brainwave tests. I would imagine, though, when you're talking about very small patients whose entire lives lie ahead of them, you want to make sure that you're absolutely correct in your evaluation of their hearing. So unlike a grown-up, what sort of backup testing do you do on little kids that you wouldn't need from an adult because we can give better feedback?
Well, you try to back up your behavioral findings, like we were describing that visual reinforcement audiometry, you know, with the child in the room with the speakers.
Right.
And that monkey dancing. That will give you an idea if the child has hearing loss, but you never just rely on that. You've got to do other testing to back up your findings.
Right, because at that point you were only able to say the hearing
is within normal limits for at least the better ear.
For at least the better ear, right.
He has a mild hearing loss for at least the better ear, or whatever. So you want to know, you want to try another test. And we do this with adults too. I mean, when you went to your hearing test, you raised your hand every time or pushed a button whenever you heard tones. I pushed the button,
you bet.
And then I think he tested you with some words.
Right, correct.
And
I had to repeat the words.
Yeah, and that kind of augments or buttresses up the tone findings that he found.
Yeah, I was surprised at how thorough it was, because there was the whole tone segment, and then there was a whole other thing that went through.
Well, with little children, a common thing is earaches, right?
Yes.
Middle eardrum problems, middle ear problems with your hammer.
I used to get them when I was little.
Yeah, I did too. And they do a test called tympanometry. Now, this is sometimes done on adults too, but it's really helpful for children because right away it's a non-behavioral test, and what it does is it puts sound into your ear, and into your ear canal, and while changing the air pressure in your ear canal, you're measuring the amount of sound bouncing back, and you're trying to tell, hey, is the air pressure on the inner side of your eardrum, is that the same as the regular room air pressure on the outside of your eardrum?
Should it be?
That's what it should be.
Okay.
And if it isn't, Houston, we've got a problem.
Okay.
So that test takes a whopping 3 minutes to do.
Oh.
It's quick.
Yeah.
So you buttress your findings there. That's called a middle ear test, tympanometry. As part of that test, they also emit a loud sound in the probe that's stuck in the kid's ear. And you're trying to see if the child has an acoustic reflex as a result of that loud sound.
Like a wince or something.
Yeah, does the eardrum tighten? And this is beyond your control. You've got two little muscles.
Involuntary.
It's involuntary. That's why they call it a non-behavioral test.
Okay.
And they'll try to see if the child has an acoustic reflex. Did a loud sound tighten the eardrum? Make the eardrum, because you have these two little muscles in your middle ear space that tighten the bones.
I didn't know
that. And that's called your acoustic reflex.
Interesting stuff. So like they do with the little hammer that makes your knee kick out.
Same thing. It's a reflex.
It's an involuntary test that you have no control over. So either you have that reflex or you don't.
And that's going to be that a deaf person won't have that.
Okay.
But some people with hearing loss still will. So that reflex hasn't really told you much about the degree of a child's hearing loss.
Okay, right.
Nor did it tell you much about the frequency of a child's hearing loss. So no test by itself stands alone. In all of medicine or all physical or rehabilitative sciences, you always use a test battery. You always have to rely on 2 or 3 different tests that all supplement and give information together to give you a picture.
Right.
Another test is that brain stem test we told you about earlier.
Right.
About the brain waves. They'll put electrodes on the child's ears, headphones on the child's head. This is sometimes done under sedation. And as we said before the break, maybe the child is just nursed and so he or she is just chilled.
Right.
And then sounds are put into the ear and you're looking for the brain waves on the computer screen.
Right.
Are you getting them? make the sound softer, softer, softer.
Right.
Where do the brain waves begin to disappear? At what intensity did the brain waves start to disappear?
And you have to do this because, unlike an adult who will sit in the soundproof room with a little control button or will nod vigorously or whatever, a child has no way of responding.
It's not going to do that.
Right.
So you have to use other means.
Right.
You use any trick up your sleeve to find out what that child hears.
When it comes time, once the child, through the battery of tests, once there's been a determination that there is hearing loss, and this child would definitely benefit from hearing aids. Are there special kid-style hearing aids, or is a hearing aid a hearing aid is a hearing aid?
One thing, you don't usually fit a child with all-in-the-ear hearing aids. The style that's called a completely in-canal hearing aid, the little tiny button that sticks in your ear, and that's all there is.
Okay.
You don't usually fit because children's ear canals grow.
Right, right.
And that hearing aid isn't going to fit anymore. I mean, kids growing like crazy. So usually they will be behind the ear style, the small ones that we make for adults too.
Right.
With a thin little wire going down in front of the ear and then inserted into the ear canal as the little speaker.
Okay.
Because that size, you can change the size of the speaker. And that's easy to do. It's just with a little rubber dome. I mean, you can just... So usually the style is behind the ear style for infants and children, but the adults, most adults wearing hearing aids are wearing the same style.
Well, you know, kids, of course, get pretty worked up and pretty active. Does a hearing aid from time to time fall out?
Yep.
And the kid would know how to just pick it up and put it back in?
Well, if a child has quite a hearing loss, he or she may end up having to wear a style of hearing aid that's called behind the ear, but it doesn't have that thin little wire anymore. That it's not good enough for that child. That child may have a severe hearing loss.
Sure, yes.
So he or she will wear a slightly larger hearing aid. It's still small. It's smaller than your pinky, you know. But the mold or the piece that fits inside of your ear canal, you know, that has to be made out of rubber.
Right.
That can't be made out of the
to
hard
allow for
plastic.
growth and
also to
violence.
Allow for violence. When the kid falls or
right.
plays on a monkey bars or whatever,
Sure.
you can't be having that hearing aid injure the child's ear.
Of course.
But also the soft ear mold, the rubbery silicone-like part that fits in the ear also prevents leakage of sound from leaking out and causing the hearing aid to whistle, because those hearing aids are usually quite powerful.
Right, right.
That's going to be, but the pediatric audiology, children's ear canals are smaller. So you can't take a hearing aid. Let's say if an adult has a 50 decibel hearing loss and you've programmed the hearing aid to fit that adult, okay, properly. Let's say now you test a child, and that child has a 50 decibel hearing loss. You can't take the hearing aid off the adult and put it on the child.
Oh, really?
You'll blast the kid to kingdom come.
Oh, really?
Because
Okay.
he's got a smaller ear canal.
Of course.
So think about it like a room. If I have 50 decibels coming out of my hand, it's going to be X amount of loudness. But if I make the walls get smaller and smaller,
It's much louder.
It's going to get louder,
Right.
Because it's bouncing around more.
Sure.
So you have to take all these factors into consideration. You have to measure the child's ear canal response.
Okay.
There's a whole ball of wax when it comes to infant and pediatric audiology. We're beginning to figure out how they drive a transport truck compared to a Volkswagen.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's a trip. I mean, it's not the regular mainstream hearing aid fitting, you know.
Well, you know, and we started almost an hour ago talking about you as a guy in a master's program, having changed your future from being a speech pathologist to being an audiologist.
Yeah.
And now we talk, you know, all these years later about all of the complications and all the difficulties and challenges posed by being an audiologist. What an exciting choice you did make, eh? And you've worked at Sick Kids in Toronto, so you've done the full spectrum.
Yep, but I'm no longer a pediatric audiologist.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not doing it these days.
Right.
And I'm sure were I to walk into the Children's Hospital here in Vancouver, I'd be needing some education, some updating, you know, because I was doing it 20 years ago. But there are some things never change, and things that never change are ears. And the other part is the necessity for a test battery, especially when you're testing someone who cannot verbally respond in kind to let you know what he or she hears.
Right. Now, we've just started talking a little bit about hearing aids, especially as they apply to small people.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll talk about hearing aids for the general population, including small people.
Sure.
Our guest, audiologist Dr. Ted Venema from NextGen Hearing and Mainland Hearing. NextGen is NEXGEN Hearing.com. That's where you'll find Ted on YouTube, all over that website. And as if one wasn't enough, he's all over MainlandHearing.com as well.
I think so, yeah.
Check it out. We'll be back after this quick timeout.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.